Napoleon Bonaparte's continental system, implemented in 1806, was a cornerstone of his strategy to weaken Britain during the Napoleonic Wars. The system, essentially a trade blockade, aimed to cut Britain off from European markets, crippling its economy and forcing it to sue for peace. However, despite its grand design, the blockade failed for several reasons, ultimately contributing to Napoleon's downfall. 1. Economic resilience of Britain. Britain's economic strength lay in its industrialization and global trade network. By the early 19th century, Britain had become the workshop of the world, producing manufactured goods at an unprecedented scale. Its navy ensured dominance of the seas, enabling continued trade with colonies and neutral countries like the United States. Even though the blockade disrupted trade with Europe, Britain compensated by expanding its markets in the Americas, Asia, and Africa. 2. European noncompliance. Napoleon underestimated the resistance he would face from his allies and conquered territories. Countries like Portugal, Spain, and even parts of Napoleon's own empire found it difficult to enforce the embargo strictly. Smuggling flourished, particularly in regions like the Iberian Peninsula and Scandinavia, where British goods continued to flow despite the restrictions. The blockade also created resentment among Napoleon's allies. For example, Russia, heavily reliant on British goods and trade, eventually abandoned the system, leading to Napoleon's disastrous invasion of Russia in 1812. 3. Economic hardship in Europe. The continental system inflicted significant economic pain on European nations. By closing off British goods, Napoleon inadvertently deprived many regions of essential commodities such as textiles, sugar, and tea. Prices soared, and local industries reliant on British imports faced decline. This economic strain fueled dissent against French dominance and undermined the loyalty of Allied and occupied states. 4. Logistical challenges. The enforcement of the blockade was nearly impossible given the scale of the European coastline. Napoleon lacked the naval power to effectively patrol and block access to British ships. British smugglers and traders exploited this weakness, ensuring a steady flow of goods into Europe. Furthermore, neutral nations often acted as intermediaries, importing British goods and re-exporting them to the continent. 5. Diplomatic failures. Napoleon's continental system alienated potential allies and neutral powers. The blockade's enforcement strained relations with countries like Denmark and Sweden, pushing some toward Britain's camp. In addition, Napoleon's aggressive foreign policy, including the invasion of Spain and Portugal and the ill-fated Russian campaign, diverted resources and attention from enforcing the blockade. Conclusion. Napoleon's blockade of Britain, ambitious in scope, failed due to Britain's economic resilience, European resistance, logistical challenges, and the unintended consequences of economic hardship in Europe. Instead of weakening Britain, the continental system exposed the vulnerabilities of Napoleon's empire, eroding its cohesion and contributing to its eventual collapse. This failure illustrates the limitations of economic warfare when not coupled with effective enforcement and strategic foresight.